You're good to go.
Hi, everybody. Today is, I think, Daf Ayin Zayin and Mesachas Eruvin. So we got to do yesterday's and today's blat. We left off at the bottom of Ayin Haim Beis. Actually, hopefully we're going to finish the parak and get to the new. So it says we left 3 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Nachan, Amar Rav Ravua, Amar Rav. Beis Chatzeros v'Gimel Batim b'Neihem. So imagine you have 2 Chatzeros, and so the Chatzeros have other homes right attached to them, and in between them there are 3 houses, 1, 2, 3, like these, like we describe these townhouses. However, the townhouses actually have openings into one another. So the Gimel Batim b'Neihem Zeba derech Zeh v'Naisei Eruv b'Zeh v'Zeba derech v'Naisei Eruv b'Zeh. So each one goes ahead and places their Eruv into the middle house. Okay, so each one places their Eruv in the middle house, and so actually, for those of you who have the art scroll, it's probably easier. You can see these are. I just want to knock over my coffee. Is that the picture? Yeah, it looks like a picture. You see, there's just 3 houses in between. It's A, B, and C. Okay, so let's say A is attached to Chatzer 1. So people of Chatzer 1 go ahead through house A and place their Eruv in house B. And people in Eruv and in Chatzer 2 go ahead and walk through C and place their house in Eruv B. So the halach is Zeh nasa beis shala zeh, v'nen nasa beis shala zeh. So even though A and C never joined in the Eruv, why? They didn't join in the Eruv, right? They didn't. But nevertheless, since their house was used to walk through and place the Eruv in house B, those are called, as we saw last time on Friday, those are called a beis shar, right? Those are considered to be a gatehouse. A gatehouse does not need to go ahead and place an Eruv. So if something is a gatehouse, then it doesn't need to go ahead and be an Eruv. So since it's acting as a gatehouse to the middle house, each one from the different size, they don't have to. And therefore, Zeh nasa beis shala zeh, Zeh nasa beis shala zeh. And I'm sorry, in the middle one, Havi lei bai shmeichim ba Eruv. And the middle one never joined the Eruv, but since their house is being used to host the Eruv, therefore they don't need to go ahead and give. They don't have to give any bread, and therefore they're including the Eruv. And therefore the Eruv is perfect for people to be able to go ahead and use it. Okay, so that was that halacha. Now, so Badik Lahu Rachav Rabbanan. So Rachav wanted to go ahead and test the Rabbanan, and he gave him a case of like a house. So Shtei Chatzeros, Shtei Batim b'Neihem. If you have 2 Chatzeros in the same case that we just had, a Chatzer 1 and a Chatzer 2, and they only had 2 houses in between. They had house A and B. And so each one went ahead and placed the Eruv in the other one. In other words, they walked through the house that was adjacent to it and put it in the opposite house. So Chatzer 1 walked through house A and placed the Eruv in B. Okay, but remember, Eruv A, they never went ahead and house A never joined in the Eruv. And then Chatzer 2 walked through B to go ahead and place their Eruv in house A. So the question is like this now. Did they acquire? Does the Eruv work or not? So mim mishvas lahu legabi lahai bais legabi hay beis shar legabi hay beis shar legabi hay bais. Now the question is like this: can we say like this when it comes to Chatzer A? Excuse me, the Chatzers were 1 and 2, right? When it comes to Chatzer 1, okay, even though, right, we didn't need to go ahead and join the house with our Chatzer because it was a beis shar, because we walked through that house to go ahead and place the Eruv in B, right? And then Chatzer 2 can say B didn't need to join our Eruv because we used it as a beis shar to walk to house 1, right? So does that work because they crisscross? But Lamaisa, the other one, right, the second house needs to be a bais because remember, you're not allowed to place your Eruv inside a beis shar. So on one hand, can it be like, to one Chatzer, it's a beis shar, and to the other Chatzer, it's a bais because a bais has to host a Eruv and a beis shar can't. So can we basically look at a house for each one that Lagabi, this property, it's a bais, and Lagabi, this one, it doesn't need to join the Eruv because it's only a beis shar. So can you say that or not? So I'm relay. So the answer, Rachava, Shnei and Loikano Eruv. They can't acquire the Eruv. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Manav Shach. If you're going to call it a gatehouse, in other words, if you call it a gatehouse because we're able to walk through it to put the Eruv in the adjacent house, then you can't turn around and go ahead and place the Eruv from the other Chatzar into this spot because we already called it a gatehouse. We called it a Beis Shar, and you have to place an Eruv in a Bais, not a Beis Shar. And therefore, one who goes ahead and places his Eruv in a Beis Shar or an Achsadra, some sort of a merpeset, a porch, or what's it called? An area like an open what's it called? Like a what was I forgot the word. One of those type of outdoor seating areas that are covered. What was it in English? It's a portico, right? You go ahead and you put it in it, right? So in Eruv, so Beis Shar, in Bais Mashu there. And if you so it's a house, it's not a Beis Shar. Then and if that's the case, then you're walking through a house, and that house is attached to the Chatzar, which is a Bais, it's not a Beis Shar, and it didn't join in the Eruv. So that doesn't work with the adjacent Chatzar. So the Gemara says, what's the difference in the case of Rav? Someone goes ahead and tells two people to go ahead and make an Eruv. Go ahead and make an Eruv for me. So he tells them, and one of them went ahead and made an Eruv for them before Shabbos. And the other one made an Eruv for them during Ben Hashmashos, right? During the time where it's a Safek, is it still day? Is it still Friday? Or is it already night? Is it Shabbos? And the one who made the Eruv during the day, right? So you remember, you have to make an Eruv before Shabbos starts, right? So the one who made an Eruv on Friday, which is perfectly perfect, but his Eruv was eaten during Ben Hashmashos. Now, if you call Ben Hashmashos day, that's a problem because your Eruv was consumed before Shabbos started, therefore your Eruv never worked. The one who basically did his Eruv during Ben Hashmashos, that was okay. He ate his Eruv at night after Shabbos started, but perhaps when he made the Eruv, it was already night. So we say over there, Shneim Kanu Eruv. Over there, both of them acquire the Eruv. It's the Gabi one will say Ben Hashmashos was already considered night, and therefore, even though it was eaten during Ben Hashmashos, was already eaten at night. And the other one who made his Eruv during Ben Hashmashos will say that Ben Hashmashos is day. So why does that work? Why in that case can you have your cake and eat it too? Right? You can call it day regarding this one to be Makel, and you call it night to Gabi this one to be Makel. But in our case, we can't say, okay, to this Chatzar it's a bias, and to this Chatzar it's a Beis Shar. Why can't we do that? So Gemara says, no. Over there, the day is Ben Hashmashos is considered to be Safek day, Safek night. So Minkar Milsa, right? Therefore, it's not something which you could notice whether you're using it as both. But over here, if you're going to go ahead and define this as a house, then the other one has to be a house, right? And either Gabi Hai Beis Shar, the Gabi Hai Nami Beis Shar. And if this is considered to be a Beis Shar to this one, it has to be Beis Shar to this one. So you can't have your cake into the other one versus day and night. Therefore, it's not something which is minker, and therefore that would be okay. But in the case of the Eruv, it would not be okay to qualify a house to one Chatzar as a Beis Shar and the other one as a Bayis. So Hadran Lach Hadar. So therefore, we finished the 6th parak, and now we begin Mazel Tov. We begin the next parak of Eruvin Chalon Mazel Tov. Fine. So is Meir on? So Meir's on. He's not on. No one has the energy without this morning. All right, it's good. I can't. Thank you. All right. So we finished another parak in Eruvin, which is not a small feat. So shkoyach to everybody, mazel tov to everybody. So now we go weiter. Cholon shebein beis chatzeros. If you have a window between two chatzeros, so you have two chatzeros next to one another, in the middle is a wall. So normally, you have a wall between the two chatzeros. It completely separates the chatzeros, right? So chatzer A needs their own eruv, chatzer B needs their own eruv, and if they're together, so the question is if there's a window. So if there's a window in the wall, is that enough to connect it where maybe it's now one eruv, or is it still two? What's the halacha there? So if we say if it's dalad al dalad b'sei chasara marvin shnayim, b'masa marvin echad. If you have a window there, which is 4 by 4, so it's at least 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, and it's within 10 tefachim of the ground. Okay, so it can't be too high. 10 tefachim off the ground, right? Roughly, 40 inches. 3.5, 4 feet or so. That's 48 inches, right? Around there, right off the ground. And if they want to, they can go ahead and make one. In other words, since that window is low enough and it's big enough, it's at least 4x4, that's within 10 tefachim from the ground, they can actually say, okay, it's like an opening, it's a pesach between the two chaseros, and therefore they consider one. You can go ahead and make a single eruv. However, if it's not 4x4, it's too small. The window is only 3x3 or even 3x4, but it's not 4x4. Oh, lomala mi'asara. Or let's say it's up at 6 feet. It's 6 feet high. This window, marvin mishnai vein marvin bechad. You can only make. You have to make 2 eruvin and not one, right? Because it's not considered to be a pesach between the two, an opening between the two. It's too small, and therefore 2 separate chatzeros, even though they can see between it, right? But nevertheless, it's not functional enough to be considered to be one chatzer. Fine. Let's see the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "Lemetanan stomach and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel." Let's say Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the Omar kol pachas b'dal kalav udami. Anything that which is less that is love, right? So we have a shaila of lavud. If it's lavud is 3 or lavud is 4. Here we see it has to be 4x4. Why? Because it must be if it's less than 4x4, then it's considered to be closed up. So maybe that's the reason why it has to be 4x4. So the Gemara says, no. Even if you say it's like the sheet of the Rabbanan, Ad kan leplegi ale Rabbanan Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who say it's only 3. Elol inel lavudim. Right, when you say a single lavud, let's say a wall is a certain far apart for something, so he says, okay, as long as it's within gimel tefachim, it's okay. But when it comes to a pesach, an opening, but even however, when it comes to a pesach, let's say an opening between, let's say it's considered to be an entrance or a pesach between 2 walls, then the Rabbanan agree it's not really b'taras lavud, it's what is considered to be an opening, and therefore it has to be a dafka 4x4, and it's not just the sheet of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, rather it's everybody's sheet. Fine, 2 dots, fine. So the word says, I don't understand, right? The Mishnah basically sort of laid out both ways. It says, Pshita, kevan d'omar dal b'soich hasara. Since it says, right, and if it's 4x4 within 10, the pachas midal ulamala me'asar lo, right? Right. The Mishnah pointed out the two opposites. The Mishnah says if it's 4x4 and less than 10, then it's good. And then it says if it's not 4x4 and it's over 10, it's no good. So why did you have to say we could have just inferred the halacha? You told us the requirements. So if it doesn't meet the requirements, obviously it doesn't work, right? So Gemara says no. No, it's trying to teach you that maybe you thought it's to teach you that if the whole thing is above 10, it's coming to teach you actually a different halacha. It's coming to teach you that halacha that if only, let's say part of it is within 10, right? So let's say the 4x4 window started at 8 tefachim or 9 tefachim. Since some of it is within 10, right? The whole thing doesn't have to be below 10. Even some of it, if it begins within 10, then it's considered to be good. And that was the chiddush of the Mishnah. And so the Gemara says, so, and Tanino, right? So it says over there, if it's all above 10, mitaso, or, right? So we said if it's all above 10, and some of it is below, mitaso, what was that? Last place. So it was so the Gemara says over there, Tanina Loha, right? We actually have learned this, right? So, so it says over there. So kulo lamala me'asar. If all of it is above 10, umitas b'sayich asara, but a small part of it is under 10, kulo b'sayich asara. Or if it's all within 10, umitas lamala me'asar, and only a small part of it is above 10. Then over there you can do it. So over there it says if most of it is above or most of it is below, it's okay as long as some of it is below the 10 tefachim mark off the ground. Then it's good to be considered to be a pesach. So the Gemara says hashta kula mal me'asara mitzasa b'seich asara amarta. So marvin shnayim. We say over there, if you have most of it above, right, and only part of it is within 10, in that case you say marvin shnayim. Over there, you can do it 2, and even if you want, you can do 1 because it's low enough. So, right, me boy. So why do you have to tell me the case where a majority of it is below, right? If you know, why did that Brisa teach 2 cases, right? If it says only a minority is below, it's still considered to be 2. Of course, I know if the entire thing is, you can do 1. Of course, I know if the entire thing is below 10, you can do 1. So why do you have to tell me that case? So the Gemara says, no, if that case was written in the case of Vazu, it told you that to give you the bigger chiddush first, and then the lesser chiddush. The point is, as long as the 4x4 is within 10 tfachim off the ground, where it's even if it starts there, then that window would be sufficient to say the two chaseras are connected, and you have a choice to go ahead and make it as one eruv, and you also have a choice to make it two, and we'll soon see what case do you have to go ahead and make it one and not two, right? So this is actually, it's like the in-between. It's a Pesach, but it's not too big, right? Because if it's too big, like if the wall was breached too much, then you say, okay, there's no wall in between. It's actually now one chatzir, and they all have to join together, but now we don't say that yet. Fine. 3 lines from the bottom, and ayin vav and aleph. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, cholon ogul tzarich sheh b'hekifu asara v'arboim tfachim. So now we have to put on our geometry hats, right, from 10th grade. And the one thing we have to remember is, I'm this thing over Shabbos, right? I still don't know what okay, well, I won't explain that. But anyways, the diameter of a circle, 2 pi r, right? Not diameter r, whatever they want to do it in terms of the radius, but 2 pi r, basically, which is the radius is half the circle going across. So a 2r is the entire width of the circle times pi. As the Gemara does, pi is not, they don't use 3.14, they use 3. So 2 pi r is the equation. So it says over there, if the window is circular, right? Now it's not straight, it's circular, then it has to be 24 round, right? So now when you do your algebra and you sort of solve backwards, so in my mind, so what was I doing? So 2 pi r, so 2 pi r, we don't know what r is, equals 24, because it says 24 as the diameter. So it sounds like the radius, right, is 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times what equals 24, right? 6 times 4. So it sounds like the radius is 4, meaning the circle has to be 8, right? 8 wide. And if it's 8 wide, then it's 24 round. So now that's what, the Gemara originally was thinking, and the Gemara was going to ask on it, why it has to be so big, because the chor has to be a little smaller. So it says, if and 2 tfachim of the circle is within 10, that's low enough. That's okay. Because then if you go ahead and place a square inside this circle, right, then the square will already be below 10. So basically look at the circle, and then you basically put a square inside the circle so that when you make the square, now the square will be a little bit below. So it has to be 2 within 2 of the bottom. So the Gemara does not understand the mathematics of this case. So the Gemara says, I understand. So when it comes to a circle, now it's going to go ahead and break down the math, right? You don't need 10th grade geometry. It's going to break it down for you. So anything which has a circumference of 3, right? We say that it's with the diameter across is a tefach, is 1, right? So 3 to 1, remember you multiply it by pi, right? Now, so betrays our sagas. If that's the case, if we're talking about it has to be 4 across, right? The window has to be 4 across, so it should be, right, 4 across, which would make its radius 2, right? 2 pi r, right? Which would be only has to be 12, not 24. Why do you require 24, not 12, right? So
isn't it that the 4 is the 4 tfachim is below the height of 10? In other words, because it's below the height of 10, that you have space to pass between the chatzerot, is permitted.
Right. So even though the bottom, so I think what you're saying is that even though the bottom of the circle might be within 10, but you need to where the circle is at least 4 tfachim.
4 tfachim, you finish. It doesn't matter where it is.
Right. So that was the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to work back into that. So the Gemara says, I understand. Okay, so let's have a circumference of 12. So the Gemara says, no, hani mili bi gula, right? So that's only right. If we're talking about, first of all, your math is off, right? Because that's only we're talking about with a circle. But over here, we're not worried about the circle being below. We're worried about part of a square. Right. That window and a circle and a circle, right, is different. So how much more is a square than a circle? So Ravi, it's a quarter, right? So B'shisar Sag, it should be a quarter more. In other words, because if you have a square, right? So the circumference of a square, if let's say is 1 tefach, so the circumference all the way around is 4, right? And the circumference of a circle, which is 1 wide, is 3. So we see that it's a quarter more, right? Or when you look at the outsides, right, it's three quarters of it, right? 3 to 4. So instead of being 12, it should circle should be require 16. So Gemara says no. Hani mila igula nafik migula rivua. That's only we're talking about when a circle is inside a square. Avarivui denafik migu. However, when you have the square inside the circle, then you need more. In other words, it's not that we need the square outside the circle. It's that we need a square and then we need a circle with at least that square inside of it. So actually the circle is the larger product than the square. So it can't be, if it was square, then the circumference is 16, but you actually have to make it larger. So my time, but what's the reason why it has to be bigger, right? Mishum marsha da kanasa, right? Because the ends of the corners, right? Because you have the edges that the circles that come out. So michti amsa beribua. So every amma, right, of the I guess the diameter is amsa utre chumshe ba'achsona, right? When you go ahead and you have basically a right triangle, right? So it's times 1.4, right? You have the two sides which are even, and then the diagonal is 1.4. So now, if you have, right? So therefore it says amsa utre chumshe ba'achsona, so right, or it's 2/5, right? 2/5, which is 1.4. So each one is 2/5. So how much is that total? If you have now, instead of being 1 across the diameter, right, we say the square has to be 4. So basically, if you look at the picture of over here, right, because you have let me just show you this picture. You have a box. By the way, it's the only geometry of the day. So if you're lost in this math, so this is the end of the math. So don't get so right. So you see over here the square. You see it's a 4x4 square. This is the window that we've been talking about. And the diagonal, right? So the diagonal, which goes from one point to the other, right? It goes across, because if you hold it like this, you see that it goes across like the middle. Any line that goes across the two opposite ends in a circle is the diameter. So the diameter is 5.6. Okay, now 5.6 times 3 is 16.8. So the circle shouldn't have to be 24 to be able to fit a 4x4 square in it. It should only be 16.8 around to be able to to fit a Pesach of 4x4 in it. So our answers, right. So it's a good question. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yechon Omar ki dayan de Kisari. So he said that that which he said we need 24 was from the Dayanim of Kisari. Ramilin, some says Karban de Kisari, others says it wasn't the Dayanim of Kisari, it was the Rabbanan, the Amri. Igula migula rivua. So he says that when a circle is inside a square, right, it's 1/4. It's 1/4 less. In other words, a circle is inside a square, so the circle is 1/4 less than the square. And rivua migula igula palga. However, when the square is in a circle, then it's 1/2 smaller. So if you do the opposite, when a square is in a circle, now a circle is in a square, right? Then therefore it has to be 1/2 larger. So if it has to be 16 around 4x4, then it had to be they multiplied by 1.5 for the circle to be 24, which is actually incorrect math, and you would get the answer completely wrong if you did it in a mathematics class. However, that was, for whatever reason, that was what they had, the Rabbanan of Kisari or the Dainam Kisari. And l'chara, that they cannot make logical sense of it, but they had that formula that the circle around the square was 1.5 larger than the square, which is not mathematically correct. Fine, 2 dots. Now it moves. Now it gets a little easier. So those of you who are not into math, it's all good. So so when we had if it was less than 4x4, so Amar Rav Nachman lo yishanu elo chalon sheben shtei chatzeros. We're only talking about a chalon between 2 chatzeros. But if you have, let's say, 2 houses and a window between, like let's say these townhouses, and you have a window between two houses, even if it's larger, then even if it's higher than 10 nami, right? If they want to go ahead and make an Erev between the two, then you go ahead and make an Erev, even if it's above 10. Why is that? So isn't based on command because a house, since it's a house and it's filled, it's considered like it's filled. So house, the whole area is considered to be filled, and therefore, even if the Pesach is 15 15 tefachim off the ground, then it's then it's no problem because the house is considered to be full. It's filled up because there's a roof and it's filled up, and therefore it's not too high because the entire house is filled. It's considered like it's full. And Eisvei Rav Nachman, Rav Ezekash, Rav Nachman, Echali Chalon, it says there, Echali Chalon Shebein Beis Chatzeros. It says whether you have a window between two Chatzeros, and that says V'echali Chalon Shebein Beis Batim, or even two houses, V'echad Li Chalon Shebein Beis Aliyos, or if you have a window between two attics, V'echali Chalon Shebein Beis Gagin, or two roofs, V'echali Chalon Shebein Beis Chadarim, or two rooms, Kulon Dalad Dalad B'Soich Hasara. All of them need 4x4 within 10. So it says over here clearly that the chalon of two houses has to be within 10. It can't be above 10. So the answer is no. Targim chatzeros say that which say that only the chatzeros needs to be within 10. It says whether it's this or whether that or whether it's a house. So the answer is no. Targuma al dalad. So I'll explain that to be going only on the requirement of 4x4. But the requirement of 4x4 one in every case has to be the Pesach, has to be at least 4x4. But when it comes to the Chatzir, that was the only one that had the requirements of within 10 tefachim of the ground. And boy, Rabbi Abba, Rav Nachman, says as the Kasha Rav Nachman, Lul hapasuach min abayis la'aliyah. If you have, let's say, an upper floor and a lower floor, or an upper resident, lower resident, and they had an opening in the floor. So they connect, right? The guy can down, can look up, the guy up, can look down. Sarich sulam kavul latera or in sarich sulam kavul latera. Do you need a permanent ladder by that, that opening, right? That on top in the guy's ceiling, so they can go up and down. So that's considered to be a real Pesach. Or could you just have the opening? It's good enough. So when we say the house is considered to be full, so therefore there is no height restriction, that maybe it's only side by side, there's no difference. If low, or it's in the middle, or it's top, all the way on top, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. So right? He says, no, you don't go ahead and need maybe it means that you just don't need a permanent ladder, but you need some sort of temporary ladder that you can go ahead and move there in order to be able to access and be able to, go from one to the other. So, Itamar Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Menyumi, Amar Rav Nachman, Echad Sulam Kavua, V'Echad Sulam Arai, Ein Atzarech. Says that no, but it is, however, is taught that you don't need a permanent ladder, you don't need a temporary ladder, nothing is needed because the house is considered to be full and therefore is considered to be a Pesach, and the two can make an Eruv together. Fine, Naya Mishnah.
Yo,
yes.
Naya Mishnah.
Real quickly.
Yeah.
Naya Mishnah.
The 10 tefachim. Remind me, what's the source? 10 tefachim is not very high off the
Naya
ground.
Mishnah.
If something is 15 tefachim off the ground, it's still like below eye level. So what's the source of 10 tefachim daf?
So the source, I think we say that a mechitza, right, is something. I'm pretty sure mechitza is halach l'mash Sinai, where we see that 10 tefachim is considered to be a mechitza, is considered to be a wall. So a wall. So if something is above a wall, it separates. For it to be connected, it has to be sort of below the wall. I think that would be the svara, right? So
the alone is low. This window is like below.
We're soon going to see this point where it calls something below 10 easier to use and more functional versus something above 10. But you're right? When it comes to, we saw when people were carrying the shizram, they wanted to unload something, right? They used the stand that was there, put it on there. So something which is, you're right, something which is lower, you could perceive as being easier to usable. Over here, it's saying that it's considered more of a connection or, I guess, a flow from one side to the other. So, but no, valid question, and you're right. So let's see the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Kaisel shebein beis chatzeros gavoa asara reich v'reichev arba. If you have a wall between two chatzeros and it's 10 tefachim, right? It's 10 tefachim tall, and it's for the reichav arba, right? It's width, right? And it's a thick wall. Its wall is 4 tefachim. Marvin shnayim ve'ein marvin echad. Like we said earlier, right? You make you make 2 eruvs and not one. Now let's say there were fruits on top. Now nobody made an eruv, right, with the top of the wall. So each side can go ahead and jump up there and eat the fruits on top. You can go ahead and use it. However, on the condition that what? You can't go down and you can't go ahead and take them down. In other words, so you can't go ahead and carry from the top, because remember, that's its own rishus. It's like rishus yachid up there because it's 10, right? It's 10 tvachim, and it's at least, it's 4 by 4, 4 wide and 4 long on top. It's zone rishus, so therefore you can't go ahead and carry down from the other. However, anyone who wants to climb up there and eat up there goes into hay. You just can't carry anything up or down. However, if the wall adasar amos, let's say part of the wall fell and now it was less than 10 amos, part of the wall came down, adasar amos. In other words, it was breached the wall up until 10 amos between the two. Right? So Marvin l'shnaim, v'imrat Marvin echad. You can still go ahead and do 2, but not 1. In other words, if the wall was breached in the middle, but it wasn't 10 amos wide, right? It was only 9 amos, the part that fell down, or less than that, right? So you can still have the option of doing now you have this huge Pesach, so it can either be used as 1 or it's still 2. Because it's like an opening, it's a Pesach. However, but if it breached more than that, let's say it's 11 or more, right, or 10 or more, right? Now it's considered to be 1 chatzir, not 2 chatzeros, and therefore you can only go ahead and make 1 eruv between the two. Everyone has to join both sides to make to be able to carry from your house into the chatzer. Fine. Zok the Gemara. Ein bo arba mai. Let's say on top, it's not 4 tvachim wide, right? It's thinner, but it's still functional. It's 3. Samarav avir shtei rishuyos shalat this bo lo yasis bo afilu malinima. Since both sides now, okay, so now this wall is really part of both. It's not its own rishus, so therefore it's part of Chatzar A, and it's also part of Chatzar B, right? Because it's the wall for each one, and each one is separated, and therefore you can't do anything, right? You can't move anything on top of there. You can't move things across, right? You certainly can't bring things from top to bottom, bottom to top. You can't do that because it's part of each one. So if A tries to use it, what do you mean? That's the rishus of B, and B tries to use it, it's also the rishus of A, so you can't do it. So that was the opinion of Rav, right? So it seems logical. However, Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Elu malin mekan v'eichlin, ve'elu malin mekan v'eichlin. Each one can go ahead and you want to go ahead and bring up, right? So you can go ahead and bring up and bring there, and you can and bring down. So each one can go ahead and use it, right? Bring up from there and bring back down, no problem. So Gemara says, well, let's see who's right. Why does Rabbi Yochanan make sense? So it's not ein oilin mikan va'eichlin ve'elu oilin mikan. It says elu oilin says elu oilin mikan va'eichlin ve'elu oilin mikan va'eichlin. That's what I mean. Our Mishnah says each side, if it's 4 wide, then each one can go up and eat. Right, that's it. Oilin malin low. Right, they can go up and eat whatever foods were there before Shabbos, but they can't bring up there. So how could you say in this case he's permitting to go up there? So Kamar, Yeshvo arba oilin lo olin in malin low. If it's 4 by 4, if it's 4 wide, then you can go ahead and eat up there, but you can't go ahead and bring anything up there, right? But if it's not 4 wide, it's less than 4, like this case you're talking about. Then malin nami, not only can you go up there and eat, you can also bring. And why is that? Also, Rabbi Yochanan l'tamei. Rabbi Yochanan goes to Shitasa. The Chiyasa Rabbi Yochanan makoim she'ein bo arba. A place which is not 4 by 4, right? And it could be even 10. Mutter livnei rishus harav livnei rishus hayachil lechatif halav. It's considered to be a makom patur. And makom patur, a person is able, if you have a thing which is 4, let's say 10 tefachim, and it's not 4 by 4, then you're allowed to go ahead, and if it's in rishus harav, you can go ahead and you can go put your package on, and then put your package back off. You're allowed to move it from on and off, right? That's called a makom patur. It's not a karmelis, it's not a rishus yachid. It's called a makom patur. And makom patur, one is able to go ahead and use on Shabbos, as long as you don't go ahead and take it from a rishus harabim, put it on the makom patur, and the makom patur into rishus yachid, right? And that would be basically equivalent in our case of taking it from chatzar A, putting it on the wall, and then take it from the wall and bring it to Chatzar B. So that you couldn't do according to Rabbi Yochanan, but you certainly would be able to go ahead and bring things up to the top of the wall because it's a makom patur, and then bring it back. So Rabbi Yochanan says this is no different than that case, right? So therefore you should hold like me. Rav less laid Rav Timi. Rav, he doesn't hold what a makom patur. It's no good. So Ibishus deraisa. If we're talking about shus deraisa, no, it's the case we just talked about when shus yachid is next to a makom patur or shus yachid. He would agree, no problem. However, over here we're talking about Rishuyas Derabanan, right? That over here, the reason why you can't transfer to one Chatzar A to Chatzar B is only Derabanan, right? Really, you can transfer from any Chatzar Rishus Yachid to another Rishus Yachid without an right on a Derais level, but Derabanan require you to have an Eruv. So, however, since this is a prohibition, so since it's something which is prohibited by the Rabbanan, and therefore more strengthen their words more than that of the Raisas, and therefore in this case they're more machmer than a case of when you have a makom tur right next to a Rishus Harabim and Rishus Yachid, and therefore in this case that's the reason why he made it usher. Fine, new case. Omar Rabba Omar Ravuna. What is this Gimel? 1 second. Bar. Okay. So Amar Rabba Bar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Nachman, Kaisel Shebein Shtei Chaseras, Tzidu Echad Gavoa Asar Tfachim, Tzidu Echad Shave La'aretz. If you have two Chaseras and there's a wall in between. Now, however, the ground is not even. So on one side you have a wall which is 10 Tfachim. On the other side it's even, right? Or even as the picture points out, it's the wall comes up a little bit. It's just not 10. I'll show you guys a picture. So there's a picture we have here. So you see from one chutzner, you have a wall of 10, and the other chutzner, you don't, right? So the grounds are not even on the same level. And so therefore, you have the wall in the middle. Now, so one is 10 tefachim, one is not 10 tefachim. So nice to know, so the zesh shavel aretz, mishum dahavi le tashmish benachas, right? Right. So this is also a little bit touched upon Azi's point, right? When he pointed out earlier that the side whose wall basically is low down or even at the ground, right? So in that case, since that wall is more part of that chutzner, it's more usable, it's more part of it. Therefore, the usage of this wall is considered to be usage of the one where it's ground level. Now there was no good. And therefore, if you have something which one side is difficult to use and the other side is easier to use, we go to the easier side, and therefore only people can use it are the people on the one with the ground level and not the other side. And Amarav Shizvi Amarav Nachman, and now we're going to say the same thing when it goes down, right? So if you have a ditch in between two chatzeros, which runs along like almost like a wall, so one side is much higher up, so therefore for them to reach down is more deeper than 10. But and the other one is much lower down. We allow the use of this wall or this ditch only to the one that is closer, right, close to the ground, and not more than 10 tefachim, because it's easier to use. The other one is more difficult to use, and we said anything that has one side difficult to use, the other side is easy to use, we give it to the easier side. Utsrichi, right? And let me just show a picture of this case, right? Just so you can imagine it. You see the ditch there, one side is higher up, the other side is not. So we say, now we need this to say that why do you have to use halachas in both cases? So we say this, if we just had the first case of the wall, right? Because over there, sometimes people use things that are higher up, right? Higher up, even though, like Azi's pointing out, something is, 15 tefachim, it's not so tall, 5 feet tall, you put something up there, big deal. But maybe if it's low down, maybe said people don't use it at all. Same low, I might say that it's not considered to be something, which is usable, i.e. by the people, even the one the lower to the ground. So, and therefore, in that case, the charetz teaches a chiddush that even that, the charetz, which is not so deep, is considered to be usable for those people. And even if we just had a case of the charetz, because I would have said people are not scared to use a ditch. About kaisel, but using a wall, maybe people are scared to use a wall, it might fall down. Therefore, I would say no. Therefore, it's strictly has to say both cases are considered to be easily used if the difference is less than 10 tefachim. Fine. Now, but a person comes, he's looking to be might. He's looking to lower the wall. Now, you have a wall there, 12 tefachim. But if somehow, or 10 tefachim, we'll say, right? But somehow, if I can reduce the height of the wall, then this wall is no longer 10 tefachim between us, and therefore it's like one eruv, right? So we have to find a way to reduce the wall, and we'll say it's like one large chatzir. Therefore, we can make chatzir together and carry from one chatzir to the other. So if we say that the amount that he reduces is 4 tfachim wide, then you can use the entire wall. In other words, what happens if I have some sort of mute, right? That I'm minimizing the wall, right? So then now it's like almost I can use the entire wall. I can. This is like a Pesach. So since the area that I can use the wall, right? This area is less than 4. So therefore it becomes a Pesach. It becomes the entire top of the wall is now usable to take up or take down. V'im lav. But if not, a mishtamish ela keneged amiyut. Then if it's not 4 tfachim wide, then I can only use, let's say, the 3 tfachim that I, lowered it, right? That I lowered the wall. However, I raised the ground. I don't want to give this the maskana, but if I raise the ground up only by 3 tfachim, then I can only use that little 3 tfachim for my usage because it's less than 10. But I can't use the rest of the wall because the rest of the wall is still 10. But if the area, right, that I built up from my ground is 4 tfachim wide, so now all of a sudden, since it's less than 10 tfachim high and it's 4 tfachim wide, this is now a Pesach to use the rest of the wall, even though in other areas the wall is still 10 higher. So the word says, Manushach, I don't understand. If the mute helps, even if it's less than 4, because I can carry over there, why can't I use the rest of the wall? And if it doesn't reduce it, I shouldn't be able to even use the wall, right, and put things on top and take things down, even the area if the mute was less than 3. We're not talking about he builds up from the ground. Rather, he reduces for the top of the wall. So if he reduces from the top of the wall, so that is never 10 tfachim. So if he reduces from the wall, that area is not 10 tfachim. That you certainly can use. The only area is if I basically take down the layer of bricks more than 4 tfachim wide, then that basically reduces the entire wall. And that makes that a Pesach, an opening to the entire wall that I can use. But if not, then I wouldn't be able to use it. And Amar Rav Yechiel, Kafa Safal. Let's say a person turns over a Safal, like a basket. It goes ahead and it reduces the height. So I have a wall of 10 tfachim. I flip over a basket, right, upside down. I put it on the ground. It's 2 tfachim tall now. So if I stand in it, the wall to me is only 8 tfachim. So therefore, it's not considered to be a wall. And it's okay to use. The Gemara says, why is that good? Is that considered to be something which is usable or takeable, right? You get removable, and something which is removable should not be able to be mamayit. So our answer is lo tzricha de chabre be'ara. No, it was attached to the ground. So if you bechabre be'ara, my hobby, right? I said even if it's put in the ground. Right? What's the big deal about time? If you have a fig, right, that was put into the straw in order for it to ripen, or you have a fig cake that was basically put into the gechalim into coals, right? If some of it is revealed, right, is uncovered, you're allowed to take it out on Shabbos. It's not muksa, it's not dug in. So even if you put some of this under dirt, you can still remove this basket. So the east lay ognayim, right? There's ognayim, there's a rim and the bottom of the basket, and therefore when you remove it, you're basically digging up the dirt. You can't go ahead, and that's a malacha of chayfer, of digging. So since you can't go ahead and dig it, so therefore you can't remove it, therefore it's considered to be quote unquote permanent by the walls. Of course, says my hobby, even that, still what's the big deal? Tonight we're going to Mishnah Hatayim lefes with starting techas agefen. One who goes ahead and he buries a lefes, a turnip, or a tznan is a radish is another case, but in a vineyard. So bisman shemitzas alav megulin, top of ayin zayin amud beis. If part of it is already revealed, and it's not fully buried in, so I didn't really, it's not considered to me of planted this turnip or this radish into the ground. There's no chashash of there. There's no issue of kalayim of 2 different species because it's not really planted. And if it grows a little bit, I don't take meiser. It's not considered to be planted in the ground. And it's also not a violation of shmita. The nitlin b'Shabbos. And over here, this is why I bring it down, because it's nitl b'Shabbos. You're allowed to go ahead and remove it on Shabbos. You're allowed to move that dirt on Shabbos. So there is no issue of removing the dirt. You're not chai for it. If you're not chai for it, so then once again, back to our question. If I put something in the ground and remove some of the dirt, right, it's still movable on Shabbos. If it's still movable on Shabbos, why is it considered to be a reduction to the wall? So when it says no, no, the only way to go ahead to remove it is dug in deep, is to basically to use an instrument, right? To use a hoe or a shovel or something to go ahead and dig it out. And therefore, since you have to dig it out, that's a real malacha, and therefore that's not much to do on Shabbos, and therefore it's more considered to be permanent, and one would not be able to go ahead and remove on Shabbos, and therefore it is considered a reduction, once again, as long as it reduces the height of 10, and it's at least 4 tefachim wide. Fine, 2 dots. Sulam hamitzri ein mayit v'atzir mayit. So it says a sulam hamitzri, an Egyptian ladder, is not mayit, but however, a one of tsuri from tsuri is a mayit. That type of ladder does reduce it. So heichidam is sulam hamitzri. So what is a sulam hamitzri? Something that doesn't have 4 rungs. If it doesn't have 4 rungs, it's small. Something is small, it's movable. If it's movable, it's not a real reduction to the height. So if you have a ladder and sides of the wall, and it's too small, therefore it's movable, it doesn't reduce the wall is still there. Now, in Omer Lei Rav Achabre the Rav Ashi, so my time the Shul Mitzvah the Law B'Mayit, right? So Omer Lei Lo Shmi Lecha Hadam Rav Acha Barad Rav Rav. Did you not hear that which was taught? He said, since it's move on Shabbos, so anything that would just move on Shabbos is not Mamayit. So even what about the ladder from Suri? So over there, a ladder from Suri is much larger, as much heavier. Since it's heavier and it's not really, it's hard to move, therefore that is considered to be more permanent, and therefore this permanent ladder next to the wall does reduce the height of the wall. And Amar Abaye, Kaisel shebein shtei chatzeros gavoa asar tefachim. If a wall between 2 chatzeros is 10 tefachim tall, v'heniach sulam rachav arba mikan, v'sulam rachav arba mikan, and you have ladders on each side, and each one is 4 tefachim wide. Vein bezel zeh shlosh tefachim, and then the ladders on each side are within, they're. So you can see that here, like this. There, the 2 ladders that are diagonal, the aerial view, right, are within 3 tefachim of one another. So if you go up one ladder, it's within 3 tefachim of the other one to go down. Memayit, in such a case, it would be memayit, right? Shloisha ain't a mayit, but however 3 or more, it would not be memayit because they're too far from one another. We're only talking about if the wall is not 4 tefachim wide. But however, if it is 4 tefachim wide, it's a thick wall. Then afilu muvga tuva nami, even if it's very far apart, it would be okay. Because remember, the ladders now it's its own rishus up there. So since the ladders each have access to its own rishus, therefore it's considered to be a rishus b'fnei atzma, and therefore we don't care how far the ladders are because you have access to that, and that is one rishus, and therefore that could make both sides. You can make one erev for both sides. And Amar Rav Bibi. Amar Ravibi Barabaye Bana Itztaba Al Gav Itztaba. Person makes to go as a head, and he builds an Itztaba, basically a step, right, or something on top of another one, right? You see over here, like a stool on top of a stool. Here's a picture of it, right? So you have the bottom stool, and then there's one on top. Obviously, the one on top is not filled in like the bottom one, but each have, right, their own purpose of using as like a platform. So he builds basically a platform on top of a platform. But he saw if the lower one is 4 tefachim wide, then it's a mite, right? And assume that it's the height of the wall, and therefore the wall is 10. However, but however, let's say the bottom one isn't 4 wide, but the top one is 4 wide, and there's at least less than 3 tefachim between the top of the lower stool to the upper stool, so that basically it's considered like 1, and if it's considered like 1, you could use the width of the top one. Then it's memayit. Then it would be memayit the height of the wall. And for Amar Rav Nachan, Amar Rav Hua, Sulam Shlivaisav Parachas. So you have a ladder, right, with different rungs that you step on, right, as opposed to like stairs. If you have the bottom one is 4 tefachim, right? It's 4 tachim. Then it's might. Then it reduces the height of the wall because you measure from there. And inami aim b'shliva tachtain arba the yesh b'shliva alyona arba. But maybe the bottom one doesn't have, but the top one has vein bezel zeshloisha. That between each rung you have less than 3 tefachim. So therefore you can sort of attach to the top one, which is 4, right? Which is 4 wide, right? And therefore it's within lavud a key to the next rung to the ground. Then it's b'mayit. And on that, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Ravua, right? And he says over there, right? Just turn the page. One last thing. Ziz hayesin akaisov. You have something, let's say, something sticking, a ledge sticking out. Right? Here's a picture of a ledge sticking out in the middle of the wall, one of the sides. Right? And you want to go ahead and put a ladder there. So the ledge is obviously it's a little further off the ground, but the ledge can't be used to minimize. Right? If it's 4 tefachim, the heniach alav sulam kosher, and you place a ladder next to it, any size ladder. In other words, we want to be able. It's too high off the ground. We want to be able to somehow say this ledge is to the ground, and therefore we can measure from the top of the ledge to the top of the wall and say, hey, that's not 10 tefachim. So how do you use the ground, right? If the ground is 6 tefachim away from this ledge, right? How do you do that to where it's close enough to the ground? So you say like this: heniach alav sulam kosher, you place a ladder there. It is a mite. The ladder reduces. However, how does it reduce? You put the ladder by the ledge, because then you can go ahead and attach it. But if you go ahead and you put basically the ladder not against the ledge but against the wall, then basically it widens the ledge because you then use the ladder, but it doesn't consider it to be basically bring the ladder down. So you have to go ahead and put the ladder up against the ledge in order for the ledge to now be the new basically ground level. But if you just put it side by side, then that would not work. And we will stop here. And tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we will continue from here. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem.